25. Unlike when we come at the latter end of the year, this is the drier season. So in theory, the rain that we saw here for race day back in October, or we saw a couple of years ago when Miguel Oliveira, this man's teammate, when he won the race, hopefully that won't happen. We're told there's no chance of rain this weekend, but you know, I still, however much there might be 1% chance, I still always think it might be out there. But it is boiling hot as the MotoGP field head out onto track for their first timed practice of the season, including a local hero, Somkiat Chantra, will be hoping that he could do the business in front of his home fans. What the business would be in his LCR Honda Idemitsu team, I'm not sure. That might be scoring a point. I think that would be a huge result for Chantra and for Lucio Cecchinello's squad. I've got Michael Laverty and Sylvain Guintoli alongside me as the clock ticks away and Marc Marquez heads out onto the track for the first time. Sylvain, you were in the commentary box with Susie earlier today when Marc went out straight away, set the fastest lap, was never knocked off the top from that moment on. How do you see this time practice going this afternoon?
If I'm honest, I think it's going to go the same way. The problem is, since we've been here at the winter testing, and you know, this morning he just yeah, he looked like a he's got it around this track. He's worked it out. It looks really comfortable on the bike. He's looked really comfortable in Sepang as well, but particularly here, his race pace was really strong this morning in the winter testing. In the winter testing, he did the best time as well a few weeks back. So, yeah, it looks really strong, Marc. Looks comfortable and happy as well. You know, you see him in the paddock and he's just walking around full of confidence. So, you know, he knows that he's going to have a good year and he's going to be very difficult to beat. The man that we've seen struggling this morning was his teammate, Pecco Bagnaia. So, you know, it's very early to tell. And Pecco, in the past, I've started weekends like this and he just builds on and then finally, you know, brings it home on the Sunday. So you never know with Pecco, but this morning was not a good session for him.
You never know with Pecco, and that has worked, hasn't it? He won all those Grand Prix last year. However, when you've got Marc Marquez as a teammate, does that strategy still work, Michael? What do you think?
The problem with Marc is he's relentless. You think back to his championship winning years, he comes out of the blocks, guns blazing, and he keeps that momentum going all weekend. Marini a little deep into 3. Yeah, I think for Pecco, he's not going to have the luxury of being able to build when he's going to be chasing Marc all season. He's going to have to figure a way. Perhaps he's got confidence in being the world champion now, the man in the driving seat, that he can just build into his weekends, not change his approach and allow Marc to lead the way, because at the end of the day, they don't pay any points for leading free practice 1 or even practice today. As long as he gets through to Q2, objective achieved. As long as he's chose the right setup and electronics setting and tyre ahead of the sprint and the feature race on Sunday, then it's job done. But you'd think it's always going to, I think, knock on your confidence a little bit when you see your teammate at the top of the time sheets. Every time you come into the pit box, look up, your teammate's at the top of the order. It begins to chip away eventually.
Now we're having a look at Marco Bezzecchi in his new colours. There's their new tech director down at Aprilia, Fabiano Sterlachini, who has done the rounds a bit in the last couple of years. Former Ducati man who has made the switch and put on gardening leave. He was then, well, he went to KTM, should I say, after he went to Ducati, then was put on gardening leave with 6 months to go of his contract. Moved over to Aprilia now, so we'll see. The Aprilia, in theory, has improved, more powerful engine, better aero, new chassis. One thing they've got to work on, though, is going to be the heat, isn't it? Heat dissipation. And they're going to find out whether it's worked this week, aren't they?
That was very much a problem last year, and the riders, well, sometimes the riders had to pull out of the race. Was it here Vinales pulled out of the race, or was it the year before? So they really had some big problems. The thing is, all these bikes are hot. What you'd think you get the wind and the bikes get cooled down by the wind, but it's not the case at all. You know, the engine is just right there, and that hot air is blowing right in your face, and you're always hiding, you know, from the wind. You know, as soon as the riders get in a straight line, they get their head down, they get their elbows in. The frame is absolutely boiling, and you know, in some cases can like burn you, you know, through the even through the leather. So you've got to be careful with these conditions, with your hydration, and the bikes as well. The technicians are trying to improve, you know, the airflow, but for the Aprilia it's still a problem. So yeah, the Aprilia riders are going to be very hot this weekend.
Marc Marquez all on red, he said, this year, like he was betting at the casino, and as you can see, he's going all in red at the start of this, like halfway round, and he is under by a third of the second. He was fastest in testing here just over 10 days ago now with a 1:28.8, the only rider to go into the 28s. Bear in mind, the all-time lap record is held by his teammate Francesco Bagnaia, 1:28.7, so still margin. But this is actually a crucial practice, because last year Marquez only got on the front row 6 times across the year, and on 9 occasions was on the 3rd row or lower. So getting through first of all into qualifying's part of the job, isn't it, of the race weekend, and this is all part of building up towards it, being fast on, I'm not going to say the qualifying tyres, but being fast on softer rubber.
Yeah, the workload that goes in, if you don't make it through in this afternoon session, it all kicks off. You've got to be on your A game on a Friday afternoon, get the lap time in, be in the top 10. It just takes the pressure off tomorrow. Then you don't have to do the Q1 session. You get out there in the morning for your additional free practice, and then focus on the Q2. Then you've got the sprint, so Saturdays are such a busy day for rider and crew, and if you can take the Q1 session out of the equation, I think that's it's a load off for everyone, and that's why it's crucial now for Mark that he can put those time attacks in. I think this year's going to be a different ball game for him on a Friday afternoon.
A lot being made of that being the 24 bike. It's not changed. It has changed. It has changed, and lots of bits have changed. Not necessarily too much that you can see. We'll get on to where it's changing, the difference between the 24 and the 25 bike. I think that's the least confusing way to call it, even though the engine, the powerhouse is the same. But there are bits and bobs that have changed on that bike. We'll just see Pedro Costa across the line into second on the KTM. We've got a lot to talk about on the KTM, but maybe we should talk in this early stage about Honda, because when we started then, there were 3 inside. Well, they are 3 inside the top 7. No, I don't care if there's just 3 or 4 laps done. We never said that at any point, did we? Last year or even the year before.
Yeah, a huge shift across the board for obviously Suncat Chandler's a rookie with lower expectations, but with Zarco, with Mir, with Luca Marini, they're right there. Every time they go on track, they're in touch with, maybe not quite matching the Ducatis, but they're not too far away. So yeah, the progress is evident, and it seems like the front end crashes, I don't want to tempt fate here, but from what we've witnessed in pre-season testing, they're not happening as frequently and not as unexplained as they were last year, and that just bodes well for the riders' confidence.
I saw Joan Mir smile, and I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that since he won the championship back in 21. Because he's happy. He's like a changed rider. Did you get to speak to himself?
I didn't speak to him. I saw him, and obviously read the interview, saw the pictures, and you just get it immediately. I mean, the body language is different, and the body language is different on the bike. We see him now on the screens. I mean, just well, that's Pecco now. He's following Pecco, but yeah, he's looking comfortable on that bike. And I mean, last year he was sort of last and crashing, and didn't know why he was crashing. That means 0 feedback from the front, and they were lacking performance as well. This year, they're finding performance. Mir is happy. He's saying that he's found. Is that Fabio or Reed?
He's one of the Pramac.
Oh no, it's a Pramac. Yeah.
It looks like Dainese Leathers. It's Jack.
It's Jack. Yeah. Did really well this morning, by the way.
Alpine Stars helmet, which is a great combination.
Yeah, that's a bit weird.
No, yeah, it's a deal that he was obviously.
But yeah, look at the Honda there. Keeping up with Pecco. He's actually catching him. I mean, we've not seen that for. I can't remember the last time I've seen that. So it's great to see HRC and Honda bouncing back, and that man Romano Albesiano making the switch from Aprilia. So yeah, Romano will be. So Romano is so he was in charge at Aprilia of the development, and he's I forgot the name now in English. He does aero. His specialty is aero. So it seems like that's what was missing as well last year. So he's like, was it last turn? So it's not.
Yeah, final corner for Jack.
Yeah, just losing the front there.
I think. Look, you can see them all chasing each other
quite early.
Oh, he was wide. Yeah, he was wide. Track conditions it's a lot hotter than this morning, so the lap times are slower. I mean, this morning Mark, after 6th lap, did a 29.5. So yeah,
he did a 29.4 at the end. By the end, and that was his 6th lap, 29.423.
So, but the track was slower in Moto 3 and Moto 2 as well. So the heat just bringing a little bit of that floating feeling, that that rubber that's moving underneath you. You haven't got as much outright performance, and it's hard to go and chase the lap time. So we're not going to see lap records this afternoon, I don't think. But what we're going to see is race pace, work for tomorrow, and we're seeing as well riders trying very different tyres. So majority of the riders are with the hard front, but some of them are with the soft, including Marc Marquez.
Yeah, on the front as well, the front spec here has dropped down one, hasn't it? So the medium becomes the soft now. There's been a change in the front rubber in terms of what they're doing at Michelin this year to try and help with some of those fronts. The front is different. It's a different measurements, and it's a different tyre. So they tried it in Sepang again. I mean, it's a tyre that was tried already last year and a bit the year before actually. And the front is different. It's a very big tyre, more volume, so it's supposed to be better, with the hot temperatures, to be with a bigger volume inside of air. It's supposed to be like less fluctuating when the front tyre gets hot, when they're following, and when the hot conditions are around. So yeah, hopefully we can see a little bit more overtaking during the races because of that as well. Well, interestingly, Pedro Costa and Brad Binder have both improved on their times from this morning. So while everyone else might not be able to reach those heights, they look that as the track got a little bit greasier, they found a little bit of pace. Yeah, that when you see that shift, it means they've made a big improvement over the lunch break. It looked difficult this morning as Pedro goes faster again, 30 flat. That's impressive in these temperatures, and everyone else just struggling a little bit to match their pace from the morning session in cooler conditions. It bodes well. The 20-25 KTM, I'm still getting my head around it. It just looks, especially from the fuel tank back, the rear end of the machine, it just looks abnormal. The thing was, I don't know if we ever saw, even in testing, a complete bike. That's what it sounded like from Brad Binder, that there were all these attachments here, attachments there. They do make the most of testing, don't they? Where other teams seem to almost get a settled bike for the second test and, right, this is what we're going to run with. It always feels like KTM are always testing things left, right and centre. Yeah, and they did that a couple of years ago as well. They were absolutely nowhere in winter testing, and then we got to Qatar, and all bikes were, well, there was 2 bikes in the top 5, so they did really well at the first race. So yeah, it might be a case of they were testing. Oh, is Andrea Dovizioso there? So he's just come back from Sepang. They were testing in Sepang with Aleix Espargaro on the Honda. Aleix on the Honda, yeah. Yeah, and Dovi on the Yamaha. So they're working hard, the Japanese manufacturers, to catch up, and it's starting to pay off. Yeah, Yamaha have Andrea Dovizioso and Augusto Fernandez as test riders. Cal Crutchlow still just suffering with a hand injury that is taking a long time to overcome, but still in theory is there too. Whereas of course Honda have switched things up with Aleix Espargaro and Taka Nakagami doing a lot of the donkey work for them. Yeah, and Augusto Fernandez is going to replace Johnny Ray in World Superbikes as well, so that's for the next race. I like something that Jack Miller said about Augusto, and he said, you know what, he's got the hunger, that he feels slighted, he feels wronged, that he hasn't, that he's lost his ride here in the championship, and that's helping in terms of testing, because he wants to show Yamaha, I deserve to actually be on a bike. So that's helping them in terms of pushing things forward. This is one of the dark horses for the season. It was funny to hear Marc Marquez, all the riders, he and Pecco Bagnaia were asked to predict their champion, and Bagnaia said Bagnaia, Marquez said Marquez. He said, well, I've got 2 chances then, haven't you? And the thing is, Alex Marquez has made a rapid start to pre-season, topping days of testing back in Sepang. He was right in the mix here in Buriram too, top Barcelona as well, the last test. So he's not been out of the top 2 basically after all the testing. He's actually because we're not expecting him. For me, he's going to be the surprise of the year. He's on that excellent package now, the 2024 Ducati. It's a package that works everywhere. And Alex Marquez is always, even in the lower categories, he's always been a bit of a, let's say, like a snow burner. It takes a little bit of time to figure it out and put it all together. But let's not forget, he's a world champion in Moto 3, world champion in Moto 2, and I think there is something coming there for Alex Marquez. Yeah, so far he's looking very good. Yeah, he moves up one of the evolutions of the bike. Of course, the latest evolution that was supposed to happen, the 2025, the GP25 engine, has been rejected by the riders. They all got to test it actually, and they all sort of said the engine braking was a bit too firm, and because there was only there were only 5 days of official tests, and they had to decide the engine, what it would be for the next 2 years. They said, we're going to stick with the same. But that's not to say, Michael, that the bike that Bagnaia and Marquez and the third factory rider, Fabio Di Gianantonio, of course, is with VR46. Not to say it's not changed, because there are still a lot of changes on it.
Yeah, you know that Ducati, Corsa, they don't rest. They're always working, whether it is a little change. If the engine configuration is locked down, because obviously it was such a good package in 2024, difficult to improve on, near on perfection, but they will have worked a little bit. Chassis, aero, even the map and electronics side, power delivery, tyre management. There's always incremental changes and those marginal gains they find year on year.
New swing arm, they've got new ride height device as well. Suspension, I know Öhlins have been doing a few bits here and there with the suspension. I wonder then, Davide Tardozzi mentioned it between the tests. Silvan, you've done a lot of work in a testing role recently, whether it be for Suzuki, BMW. The fact that you had those 2 tests very, very quickly, and we are starting earlier than ever for a MotoGP season, in the MotoGP era anyway. I know some started back in Daytona in January, back in the day in the 60s and that. But, you know, not much lead time before the start of a championship. And, you know, we expect 4 strange races at the start of the year, you know, going from here to Argentina to Austin to Qatar. So I don't know, how does a factory deal with that? You know, suddenly Ducati, thinking they're going to have to build all these GP25 engines, have to go back and build some more GP24 engines.
Yeah, I mean, they plan for all these sort of things, and the engine testing would have, you know, started a long time ago, because, like you said, because the engine being frozen now from the engine spec that they are using in this first free practice this morning. That's the engine spec they're going to have to use until the end of 2026. That's for all the teams that haven't got concession. So basically, KTM, Aprilia, and Ducati. So they won't be able to change it. So they've got to get it right. And sometimes getting it right is being conservative, which is what they've done. They've got a package that works really well, and they're going to do some tweaks. But with the engine spec, they decided that it wasn't worth it. I think all the riders were pretty much all in agreement that that new spec was better. Well, they all basically said, to resume it quickly, that it was better in the acceleration phase, more smooth, but the engine brake phase was not that great. And let's say the bad points outweigh the good ones. So if there's any doubt, you just can't take the risk. Now, the other thing for Ducati is that they don't have to produce all their engine right now. They only need, you know, 2-3 engines per rider. So yeah, but they like the winter testing was not a long time ago, so they would have had to
well, Davide said what normally would take 3 weeks, we're going to have to do in 10 days effectively. Yeah. So, you know, basically half the time that we would normally have to do it in. So there'll be a few sleepy people, as I'm sure there are watching this back home in the UK, a few sleepy people back in Borgo Panigale as well at the Ducati factory, working all hours that God sends, as Marc Marquez heads back out onto the racetrack. He sits second behind Pedro Acosta. That's great to see, isn't it? At the top of the timesheets. We weren't quite sure what we might get from KTM, but that's just an instant reminder that in Pedro Acosta they have a special talent in their colours. All the worries of the insolvency, I'm not saying they're behind them, because they're going to have to pay up towards 600 million euros by the middle of May, but in theory a lot of that money is already sat waiting to be handed over to creditors, so that's something. But on the racing side of things, we just didn't know, did we, where we were going to find KTM at the start of this year. And you have to say, both Acosta and Binder, they're racers, aren't they?
Always
sort of people, you just feel like, oh, in fact, Brad almost said as much yesterday, just get me racing.
Yeah, as soon as those lights go out, that's when Brad kicks it up a gear, whether it is just the adrenaline that surges through his veins, and he looks like one of those adrenaline type riders. He just can find a little bit extra. It's a special talent, and Pedro Acosta's got similar, and yeah, they'll never show too much in testing, never have, and whenever it comes down to crunch time, they're ready to go. But yeah, it's promising when you see Pedro jump up the order in the practice on a Friday afternoon. It means he's got something he feels he can fight with. And
you know, so many of the riders we've spoken to over the last couple of days here have said, look, and it is something that we need to remind everyone of at home, that you can learn so much by testing. Yeah, you know that Marc Marquez is quick, you know that Marco Bezzecchi had a lap in him at Aprilia, but you don't get to measure yourself on track with the other bikes at the same time. Now you do, exact same time. You know that someone's not just putting a fresh tyre for a lap. You know that they've got a limited amount they can use here. And also, I'm thinking of the Honda here, trying to follow Marc Marquez, for example, with Luca Marini. What we've heard is they've still got that issue in terms of grip coming out of corners, still got top end in terms of the top speed. It isn't quite there. And it's when you go racing, that's where those differences become stark.
Yeah, all those weaknesses, then there is no hiding. You know, you are on track at the same time, and there's no hiding from it. It was great, actually, for a lap there. So Marc Marquez switched to the hard front tyre, and it obviously took it a little bit easy in the first lap, doing a high 30, and Marini was catching him, and I was like, what? The Honda catching the Ducati, we've not seen that forever. But obviously Marc now is pushing harder, so that front tyre giving him a little bit more support in the braking, a little bit less edge grip, but looks like overall it's working quite well, and he's gonna retake. Yeah, he's just retaking the first place and the first 129.
It feels like this is psychology, like he's awake. And he's straight into a dance. Who can blame him? Hey, probably the last time we saw a Honda closing on a Ducati like that was when Marc Marquez was riding one of them. That's probably the only time that we've seen it in recent years. Right, Pecco Bagnaia back in,
and he's back as well at the front. This was a really decent lap time and a decent pace for him, much better than this morning.
Yeah, about 600ths quicker than he went earlier today, but as we say, we reckon conditions are that much trickier.
It's about half a second slower today, I would say. Well, this afternoon, I would say, compared to this morning.
You feel like that, don't you? Just because of that greasy feeling of this surface that we've got here. The Chang International Circuit in Buriram, just rounding this couple of left-handers, then it's a flick onto the right. I mean, it is a bit of a drag strip on the first half, but when we come into this part of the racetrack, it's got a bit of fun to it. Yeah,
a lot of flow here. You can see Marc just rolling through the middle of the corner. You've got to have good feeling with the front on entry. You see sometimes it does twitch and bobble. You need it to turn, hook back in itself. Physical in terms of direction change here with all the aero and the rotating mass of the engine. The bike just wants to go straight. Marc gets the run, and he's set up a perfect move into the last corner on Somkiat Chandra. Nicely done. Yeah, and Somkiat could just then tuck in beside Marc Marquez. We've seen a few moves like that from Marc Marquez at that final corner over the years. I think back to the battles with Dobby, with Fabio Quartararo.
There's always a cut back to do there because it's very easy to overdo it. It's very tight, so as soon as you're a little bit inside, obviously, to make the overtake, you can't exit the corner as well, and we've seen a lot of that in the dry, but also in the wet race. Even having to overtake there, Marquez also again underneath the 130 barrier.
One of the big things you noticed there, and it was quite evident out of the last corner, the Honda lowering device is much better, much smoother, and getting a lot lower this year. I was out trackside on the exit of this turn this morning, and you could see it from the Castro Honda, the factory boys, and it just looks so much more planted. And when it was side by side there with Chandra and Marquez, matched the Ducati, didn't it, on acceleration, that first touch.
Yeah, that initial part, the first, like, say, 100 meters, he was matching him. And then that's only then that he was losing. The rear part of the bike looks, it's funny how it looks weird now because it hasn't got the wings. Look, it's like a...
they've took them off the seat.
Old school.
It looks old school, and it's got that strange.
In theory, that new mass damper inside that big old box at the rear of that Honda.
That's the new thing now for Honda this year, and for KTM as well. They've added this this big box at the back. So we don't quite know what's inside. Everybody suspects that it's a mass damper, but it could also be that they're moving weight to the back of the bike, so they could put like electronic components, and we used to do that with the testing.
Quite to try that bit more.
Yeah, you move weight to the back, and the bike start to behave differently. And it's funny because sometimes you move very little weight, 500 grams, 1 kilo, and the bike does behave differently. So it affects those bikes quite a lot, and it affects them on the way they handle, and especially in the braking zones. So Honda and KTM have made a big difference in the shape of their bike with the rear end.
Pecco Bagnaia said in the press conference yesterday, just his plan for the season is to be more calm, realise sometimes that, the results aren't there. Of course, he had all those crashes during last year, in races in particular, and that's what did him really. 3 main race crashes for him, 4 coming
kind of confidence there. Confidence of Joan Mir, unbelievable. I mean, we've not seen that in years. He came in that corner with the rear of the bike going up and the front twitching. Absolutely brilliant to see him doing that. He's had miserable years, and now he's finding the feeling again with his bike, and he's just gone third.
And then you saw the travel, didn't you, of the rear as it dropped down. In testing in Sepang, we saw a lot of the starts Honda were doing, and it was on the ground. And they even had scrape marks on the bottom of the belly pan. What they were saying was they were coming out of pit lane to do the practice starts, but obviously you couldn't release the ride height device in the first, so they're going around turns 1 and 2 with it dragging on the bottom, because
the Hondas were actually dragging. Like when they dropped the bike on being straight, they were already dragging. So that's how low they go now, and yeah, that's why they get those starts. Like now, a good start in MotoGP now is 0 to 60 just under 2 seconds. I mean, that is unbelievable.
I mean, yeah, make sure your teeth are glued in for that one. Joan Mir running third fastest in these early stages, still with that lap, but it's a different Mir. I mean, every time, I think we saw Joan Mir, maybe we saw him 20 times last year, and every single one he was picking himself up out the gravel. Yeah. You know, realistically, of how many times we actually saw him out on the racetrack.
It was struggling. The reality, yeah. Yeah, not confident, not fast, and crashing. And, as a former MotoGP world champion, not where you expected to see him, and in the doldrums, but yeah, so positive to see him attacking, riding with confidence, and taking the most out of the package right now.
When we first saw him burst onto the scene, back in the Moto3 class, his strength was braking. That was it. And the fact was, the Honda completely nullified his ability to do that. But you have to give him credit, because the fact he kept throwing it at the scenery.
Yeah, I mean, that was his strength on the Suzuki as well. You know, the 2020, when he won the championship, his main strength, and, you know, looking at data, comparing to Alex as well, Rins, his teammate at the time, where Joan was making, you know, they had a very contrasting style actually, but Joan was very strong in the braking, and that's where he would feel comfortable, you know, sort of overriding the bike. Wasn't able to do that on the Honda ever, and he is now. So yeah, it's nice to see a happy Joan Mir.
Did Sandy Hernandez work with Joan last year, or is he? That's a change in crew chief at Honda, I do believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
no, he was Sandy was
it Sandy last year?
Wasn't he?
I'm trying to remember.
Pretty sure, yeah. Pretty sure it was, because I remember thinking about how, you know, him and Marquez and Mir were always rivals.
Oh yeah, true.
Because it was Giacomo Guidotti was with Luca Marini, who's now working with Jack Miller. Jack and Jack together at Prima Prama. So Bagnaia here, as we were saying before, saying that being calm is going to help him towards the title. Do you feel that's the way? We heard the controversial comments in the Ducati documentary that they put out there from Davide Tardozzi, where he said, quite no uncertain terms, basically, you need to be a bit harder out on the racetrack. You can't be the gentleman all your life. It got quite heated in the little porter cabin.
Well, I mean, he wasn't that gentle last year. He's had some proper, like, rough fights, including one with Marquez in Jerez. That was, you know, contact and everything. He didn't give up then. No, I wouldn't agree with that. I think he'll be looking back at this season last year, Pecco Bagnaia, and he'll be regretting the mistakes, because this is really, but it wasn't lacking speed. It wasn't lacking consistency. He was lacking consistency. Sorry, he was lacking, you know, making some mistakes, and he let too many points go away when he was in situations where he could have taken a lot of points without taking victories. So he'll be you know, be looking back at that thinking, I should have just, you know, finished second, finished third, and yeah, not push over the limit. So, but Pecco is still growing, you know, as a rider. He's still growing, and you know, he's got a tough challenge ahead this year with that man, Marc Marquez, on the same bike next door to him.
And he's always had the upper hand in that Ducati garage, hasn't he? Pretty much since he went up from the Pramac team, has always been the one, you know.
Yeah,
he went in to replace Dovizioso, had the faith put in him. Now, you know, it's not as straightforward as that. Can you put yourself in his shoes? What it must be like to have Marc Marquez suddenly appear on the opposite side of the garage?
I tell you what, if you asked Jorge Lorenzo, Danny Pedrosa, any of Marc's teammates, he's probably the worst. It's like being teammates with Casey Stoner back when you were Marco Melandri, or whoever you came up against. Those riders who have the unearthly ability to extract something that nobody else can out of a motorcycle, and Mark's one of those gifted geniuses. And yeah, Pecco's very gifted in a different way, but still super fast, methodical, will work it out, will challenge Mark every single weekend, I do believe. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see how the relationship evolves and how Davide manages it. You mentioned there the stern words he did give to Pecco last year, and obviously he's not shy in coming forward with his opinion on it, and Pecco dealt with it well. But yeah, it'll be an inter-team rivalry that Davide will have to manage the dynamics of it. But two super fighters for this title in Ducati red.
Here's Marco Bezzecchi, suddenly become the lead development man, I suppose, at Aprilia, after Jorge Martin injured himself at the end of that first day of practice testing, should I say, back in Malaysia. And he stood up, hasn't he? Didn't have the greatest of Malaysia tests, but when it came here to Buriram, top on occasions, top on in the final session, but third overall by the end. And you've got to think that Marco Bezzecchi has found some of the form. He didn't get on at all, did he, with corner entry of the GP23 last year, which he was riding. So, you know, he stepped onto a bike that he feels a lot happier with.
Yeah, it was a disaster really for him last year. You know, you could see he was really struggling and could not find a good, or very rarely could find a good feeling with his Ducati 2023. So he struggled, but on that Aprilia, he took it not steady, but you know, he sort of like built his winter test in a really clever way, you know.
The problem we had
build up
what Marquez did on that same bike, wasn't it? And so people were looking at that, having jumped off a Honda.
Yeah, but then again, you've got a Marc Marquez that can sort of override things and override problems, and this type of riders, they're just really rare. It doesn't mean that Bezzecchi is not a good rider. He's an excellent rider. I mean, he was fighting for the championship 2 years ago.
Exactly.
But you've got guys like that just they do think, like Michael said, you know, those Casey Stoner, you know, Jorge Lorenzo at the time on the Yamaha, and Marc Marquez now, where they can just compensate for you know, for the bike's sort of issues. But Bezzecchi struggled, and now on the Aprilia, it seems like he's found his mojo. He did a really good strong test here in Buriram. Was strong this morning again. So yeah, it's good to see him back at the sharp end.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do here with this, of course, last 20 minutes or so, often when they've been putting in the soft tyres. But you know, most teams you think have got their setup sorted. They know the direction they're in. Do you maybe throw another tyre at it just to make sure for the opening round, because we know how crucial Friday afternoons is? Do you change what might be a normal strategy because, well, I don't need to fine-tune my bike that much more?
Yeah, they've been here for pre-season testing. They come with a good base into this weekend, so it will be, I think, over this, especially the last 15 minutes, it's all out time attack mode for everyone, because we know track position is crucial in MotoGP. You can't afford to be down in the third, fourth row of the grid. Mark was able to pull it off on occasion last year, but it did become tough at times. The depth of field, the depth in terms of the machinery, it's still difficult to pass. I know Michelin have made changes with the front tyre, and Sylvain was alluding to the fact that it should make overtaking a little bit more possible this year. But yeah, you really have to nail Friday and make sure you're inside the top 12 on the grid for Saturday afternoon.
And lots of love for Marc Marquez here this week, and he's got his own grandstand, as do Fabio Quartararo and Somkhiat Chantra, and Ducati also. So you can see where the allegiances lie here with the Thai fans.
The time attack is going to be good fun, I think. I can't wait. I think he's going to start quite early. I think they will throw that extra tyre. They've got to. You know, everybody's really tied together. They've tested it for 2 days. I mean, just look at the lap times around. Look at the lap times around 10th place. How close do you want it? You've got basically in between. Look at Marini in 10th. He's half a second off. And you've got within 2 tenths behind him, there's 5 guys. So yeah, that's going to be tight.
And there are going to be yellow flags almost certainly, as the track is that little bit greasier and people have started to push. And there's Miguel Oliveira on what I have to say is a beautifully turned out Pramac Yamaha.
Does look good.
I think it looks great.
Yeah.
I think it looks better than in Ducati. Was that someone coming down? going down behind, or is it just someone entering pit lane?
Yeah, down the escape road on the left side.
But where things have been going okay, and quite well actually for Jack Miller, not so much so far for Miguel Oliveira.
Yeah, I think under the radar a lot in testing, but with Miguel, and you know how he's methodical he is, how he works into his race weekends, into his season, and starting this morning he looked good, he looked strong, and yeah, you never rule out Miguel Oliveira, quality rider. He's down 21st at the moment, but still only 1.2 seconds off Marc Marquez. Such is the closeness of the class this year.
Back out to see Somkiat Chantra on the Honda. I felt for him during testing because it always felt like he was getting the cast-offs. Like there's a lot of work going on in the factory team and Johan Zarco doing bits, and it felt like he was, because he was learning his trade more than anything, but he was just, you know, running around really on the last bits and bobs that there were. But looks like he's got the full package now at the start.
Yeah, he's only 2/10 off a Q2 spot at the moment, but he lost the front there in the middle of turn 9. I think that's going to cost him a little. Yeah, deep again. Oh, yeah, another twitch of the front end.
And it's all a learning process, isn't it, for Somkiat? But I suppose coming here to a track that he knows so well will be another thing. Yeah, it'll be another thing for him though, knowing what his baseline is.
Yeah, and you've got to expect a time of adaptation. You know, there's rookies coming from Moto2. Well, we got there.
Just gone top.
Johan Zarco going top.
Are we going to have another year of Sylvain going, do you know what? I've got a Johan Zarco feeling.
But that's a time attack. You see the tyres look completely new. Was it soft front? It looked like a soft front.
It is, yeah. Soft front, soft rear for Johan. Yeah,
so that's the first time attack, and we've got 24 minutes to go.
Yeah, meanwhile, Marc Marquez on a hard front and medium rear is 0.3 behind him on that lap.
Yeah, Mark is still doing the homework for the race. So he started with soft front, soft rear, then went to the hard front, just to try it, and then now on the medium rear to try that as well. So then they've gone around. Nobody's running the medium front, so it looks like they just don't like that one. Sometimes that's the case. They Michelin bring a tire and it doesn't quite work, so people the riders and teams just ignore it and use the other tires in the allocation. But yeah, that was a one lap time attack.
In the livery championships, I believe that. You've got the Pramac bike, mentioned that. We've got the Castrol Honda, which again, they've a little tweak to it. It looks really, really good. And this weekend, we have the Trackhouse bike with the Gulf on it, which we haven't actually seen in this session yet. But that's a beauty as well, isn't it? So I think they're going to have a face-off for which bike looks the best.
Do you like the Castrol Honda LCR or the Honda HRC Castrol?
I don't like the factory Honda.
Do you not?
No, I'm not a fan of it. I know a few people are, but I'm not.
I don't like it.
I normally like HRC colours, but that one.
I don't like how the Castrol logo's added, but I like the red, blue, white head-on. I think it looks really smart, the new HRC livery.
I just think it looks a bit anonymous.
I love it. Yeah, I like it because it's the Honda like sort of factory colours as well. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of good livery, and even the Ducatis this year. I don't know. There's something to it. It just looks great.
Another sub 130 for Marc Marquez. He did one on the previous lap. These are all race laps, aren't they? That's what he's looking at when he did almost a full race simulation here. Nobody else did a full race simulation. He was in this kind of pace. Well, he was at the pace that was competitive. Everyone else was doing sprint race simulations.
He's basically doing top 3 lap times with the medium rear and a used hard front now. So this is kind of his race pace. Yeah, they're in trouble, aren't they?
Well, it's never over till it's over. That's why we go racing, Sylvain.
I know, but yeah, he's and he shows the confidence as well. He's still working at race pace. He's still, you know, in race mode. Yeah. Well, if anything, I mean, he's gonna put the pressure on, and we're gonna see. This is it.
It's a story emerging, isn't it? Already that here he is, but we are only on. Not even at the end of day one, so let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we've got 22 rounds of racing ahead of us, and it's a long way from here. He's obviously coming into the season full of confidence, leading the way in testing, seems happy on the bike, seems to have gelled with Marco Rigamonti, his new crew chief. He's got the same electronics engineer with Mattia Sorini, who was with him last year in Gresini. He just looks at one with his bike and happy inside the pit box. So yeah, it's slightly ominous, the form, as Sylvain said. He's got on track at the moment with a used hard front tyre and a medium rear, and he's lapping in top 3 pace against time attack mode. He's got a little in his pocket.
But we know Pecco Bagnaia is fairly unflappable and will just go about his own business, do his own thing, and then more often than not, it means that he's up towards that sharp end. As Marc Marquez comes back down, it's actually Johan Zarco on top on the LCR Castrol Honda.
It's all our French support. There's quite a lot of French in the grandstands. I mean, we found quite a few this morning with Nat, and yeah, they're all dressed up as well, you know.
I'm a bit disappointed you haven't got one of those red, white and blue Mohican.
I did ask for one, and they didn't have any spare ones, and they all like stuck to the heads, so I couldn't take one.
So Bagnaia heads out, 20 minutes on the clock as we get to the end of our first day of practice here at the Thai Grand Prix, the opening round of 2025. And we'll have our first 10 decided, going straight through into the qualifying final. If you are new to the format, we have 3 free practice sessions, including this one in the morning today, which we've had already, this afternoon's one, and tomorrow morning's one. But the times from this session alone, if you're inside the top 10, you go straight through to the qualifying final. But there's another opportunity for you to get through into that final in the Q1 practice.
Just look at the front tyre, how much is squashing on these images. I mean, unbelievable. So that new front tyre is supposed to be 130, that width, but it is kind of flexible, and with because it's a different shape as well, it's actually bigger than that. So it looks massive. It's like a Moto3 rear tyre basically. Huge front tyre, so it gives them a bit more contact, and the riders love it.
Tyre pressures, do we even go anywhere near that?
We've not heard about it yet.
Not talked about it yet.
No, I think it's more a thing that will come into play during the races, because the critical time for the tyre pressures and tyre heat and tyre pressure is when people follow each other, and it's in hot conditions like here. So,
and they don't do much of that during testing, do they? You don't sit behind someone. Luca Marini up into third, so that's 3 Hondas in the top 5.
Well,
have Honda been sleeping on us?
What's happening?
Well, the talk was that, we had Ducati dominant, and they've stuck with last year's engine because they're that confident, they're that much of an advantage. Aprilia, not too far away. They've made some progress, maybe closed the gap ever so slightly. KTM, not sure if they just stayed a bit where they are. Yamaha have definitely made a step forward. Don't rule out a podium here or there, but don't get too excited about thinking about wins. Honda, well, they're like Yamaha, maybe, making steps forward, but making them slow and steady, like they tend to do. But 3 Hondas inside the top 5. One of the big problems was no Hondas were ever getting through into the further stages of qualifying.
You heard at this point last year the HRC have brought another horsepower engine. It's got good top end, but it just wasn't accelerating off the corners. It took a bit of a combination of the better lower device they've got now, maybe a change in engine configuration for sure on electronics and the strategy to get the anti-wheelie effect, get it off the turn without wanting to pivot to the rear, and it seems like they've really nailed it, and that's just, it's given them acceleration off the turn, and you carry that speed all the way down the straight. So it's free time the riders have gained there, and then they've got front end confidence. Look at that, just pivoting around the last turn.
It looks like a complete different bike for Joan Mir and Luca Marini there. Well, let's not, I mean, these are only 2 riders that are doing the time attack. Soft front, soft rear, and they've gone for it for a couple of laps. So the times are going to tumble down, but just the way the bike looks, the riders have so much more confidence. You can see it just watching the images. Last year, you were watching them, and you could just hear the rider thinking inside his head, am I going to crash there?
No, nervous.
Sometimes they did.
Just look so nervous.
Yes, you're super nervous. They're able to play with the bike. They're putting the rear wheel of the bike in the air and controlling it as it comes down. It's a little bit Ducati-esque. It just looks so much better. Yeah, it looks like a fun bike to ride. And last year it looked like a nightmare.
Well, look, even if they aren't in the top 10 by the end of this session, it's already more than we saw at any point
100%.
of last year. And let's hope it is. Let's hope we've got more manufacturers. We don't want Ducati to dominate. We don't want this. Last year in Thailand in the sprint race, it was a top 8 of Ducati. Well, that guaranteed isn't going to happen this year, only because there's only 6 Ducatis out there.
It could still happen. It could still be a top 6, to be honest.
But things are going to change. Remember, Honda and Yamaha have concessions they can make, where Ducati have had to freeze their engine with last year's powertrain, Honda and Yamaha can make progress, can
how about that guy, Gav? How about that guy? He's been struggling, hasn't he? He won the sprint last year.
Yeah.
Well, a few months ago, on the Ducati in the dry, and
he's going to go wide here.
He's really struggling, Bastianini. So yeah, a long way away in Sepang. He says they've tried. So he's got his old crew chief back, Alberto Geribola. He's back with him as a crew chief. And he said they tried to sort of replicate the setup and the weight distribution that they used to have on the Ducati, because Enea Bastianini is very peculiar about how he needs to feel about the front tire, and you know, if he doesn't feel the right way, he just can't find his pace. And they've tried to do that, it doesn't work. They've come back to a setting that is more like a Costa, to sort of stop and go style, and
that's from Malaysia Spargro saying back at home, of course, test rider. So he looks like he's back in Andorra anyway. He looks a bit more mountainous than Sepang does, but he has been out testing in Sepang. Yeah, Bastianini said actually the problem was for him, well, one of the problems, because there've been numerous, but one of them was that he was struggling to use the rear brake, and that's something that he's so used to doing that, but when he's doing it, he's blocking the rear tyre. So it just, corner entry is, as we saw there when he was heading into turn 5, through turn 4.
A lot of backing in, a lot of what we call negative slip, where the rear tyre is just, you know, it's not locking, but it's sort of slipping, going much slower than the front tyre, and the bike just drifts in the corner entry. So yeah, he looked like he's still struggling with that. It's well, you just have to adapt, you know, different bike. You have to find the sometimes it comes really naturally for a rider. I would say, like this year, for example, Jack Miller going on to the Yamaha looks like naturally he's found like a happy feeling straight away. But for Bastianini, it's completely the opposite for now. So that's when you have to work at it, change the setup, trying to get your feeling better. And that's another time attack from Binder.
So they are putting them in early, some of these time attack laps, as Brad Binder now goes up into second. The script that people were writing at the start of the season already being ripped up, with Honda up there, with KTM a lot more competitive at this stage, and now Yamaha joining the mix. So no Ducatis inside the top 3. I tell you what, there are records that we're looking at breaking in terms of, there's always been a Ducati on the front row for years now, and things like that. You know, who knows? Could well change, but there's still a long way to go in this first time practice.
Yeah, this good lap from Pedro Acosta. It seems like the hard front is the preferred option here, even in time attack mode for KTM. Hard front, soft rear, both new, and he's going to go to the top of the leaderboard, 29.5.
Yeah, really competitive, that one. Still behind where Marc Marquez was earlier today.
There's a lot of red helmets now on the everything is red. It's all lit up just suddenly like that.
All red.
All the Ducati boys are out now, and we're going to see some fast lap times.
Only riders back in the hutch: Marini, Fernandez, Bagnaia and Agura. Everyone else is out on the racetrack, about to set fast lap. So let's have a look at Frankie Morbidelli in his new VR46 colours. He is riding on the same bike he ended last year with, so that's another thing going in Frankie's benefit, is the fact that he's not had to change anything. It's just exactly the same machine as Brad Binder improves his time in 4th. Marc Marquez very deep in the final corner there. As he comes to the line, the crowds cheer, and he still goes to the top. It looked a little bit deep, didn't it, when he went through turn 12, but somehow gets it across the line.
Not that much though. That was that's pretty tight, really. He's chosen, Marc Marquez, to use the soft front, like the two Honda boys that we saw at the start of the time attacks. And yeah, that's well, provisional best time for Marc Marquez, but not a huge difference.
He's under through the first split on this occasion. He's got Johan Zarco following. Somkiat Chantra, it looked like, was behind him too, as he heads down the second of the long straights here, down towards this fast turn 4. And then into 5 and 6. Double apex left. That's where you have the long lap penalty, long lap loop, should I say, in case you incur a penalty. Through the kink of turn 7. Now attacking hard up towards 8. Third split comes in between turns 8 and 9. His brother Alex also going well here at the back of this quartet. That's where Marc Marquez crashed out of the race in the wet when he got high up on the curbs. And he's under through the third split, but Alex Marquez that little bit quicker. So it's Marc v Alex at the moment on this lap.
Marc made a small mistake in his previous lap, so he's probably going to improve by a couple of tenths, just under that.
Let's have a see as he comes to the line now. Yes, there he is, goes fastest with that lap. Alex Marquez goes up into second place. Thought about going through on Somkiat Chantra, but didn't manage it. So, Marquez brothers 1 and 2, Acosta third, Morbidelli fourth, Zarco fifth, Mir just gone into sixth place on the factory Honda, and then it's Brad Binder back in the pits, Fabio Quartararo, Luca Marini and Fabio Di Gianantonio. That's impressive. I tell you what, he hasn't ridden a bike now since the first day of testing until today, because he broke his collarbone after he crashed after a wheelie at the end of that first day of testing. Gets back on a bike. He was down the order today, but when the time attacks come in, he's grit his teeth and got on with it, Fabio.
That's impressive, yeah, not much training, and you know, obviously very compromised winter testing. Well, almost no winter testing. He's only done a day. It was quite a bad break as well for his collarbone, wasn't it, Gav, with the collarbone being broken really close to his already damaged shoulder from last year, where he had a surgery and a long recovery for his shoulder during the winter. So that's a really strong effort from DJ.
Top 10 down to Di Gianantonio, covered by 0.8 of a second. Now we're watching Pecco Bagnaia, who's outside the tennis thing stand. He's 0.4 off through the third split. No panic button to be hit just yet for Pecco Bagnaia. Quite often in his case, it's slow and steady wins the race. That's the aim, to get to the checker flag first. He goes up into 9th, so inside the top 10. Ayagura has just gone up inside the top 10 also. He was briefly in 9th. Juan Mir's got even quicker still. I'll tell you what, the Honda even in one lap trim as well, he's doing it.
Unbelievable. I mean, the transformation, it looks like a different bike. Completely different bike. They have done an amazing job there, Honda, to turn things around. And
how much, I know we keep seeing Romano Obesiano on the screens, but he only joined them after the end of the season. He was still working hard in Aprilia. So do you have to put some of it down to all the other Honda engineers who were, because it doesn't happen overnight, does it, Michael?
No, it's a process, and it does take a lot of time. There will be some parts already that Romano will be able to put his fingerprint on, and it could be those small parts that do make part of the difference, but it's everything coming together. So yeah, you got to say credit to the team that worked through it last season, used the concessions, kept moving it forward. They had to put the pieces of the puzzle together over the winter, and Romano will have assisted on that. But yeah, it'd be good to pick Romano's brain, see if he gives us any insight, whether he's really played a big part in it so far. I know Gigi, when he moved to Ducati, played it down initially. He didn't actually really, it took a little bit of time for him to really put his stamp on the Desmo Sedici.
For that kind of difference though, it's something fundamental. You know, it is not a small tweak. So they've done something completely different.
Well, to give them front end feel.
We're gonna need to go into spy mode, aren't we?
Your eyes lit up when you said that.
I love it.
Like you're about to don a black tie and suit and think you're James Bond out there.
Yeah, yeah.
So 7 minutes remaining. Pecco Bagnaia, as it stands, in 9th place, heading through to Q2. But still, we'll have to go quicker than that, you feel, with most of the riders back in the pits now. There are 6 out on the racetrack, and 4 of them have just left pit lane. Christian Gabarini on the left. He's been involved in World Championships for Pecco. Casey Stoner at Ducati, but also for Marc Marquez at Honda, was in the backroom staff. And we get our first glimpse of the Gulf liveried Trackhouse bike just as Ayagura comes back down. I like it. I know Neil Hodgson said he wanted more, but I don't really like it.
I think it's just the black wing at the front.
But it's quite cool when you see it in the flesh when you're there. It's got the Trackhouse logo across it, and it does look quite cool.
It does still look really cool.
And even the way the garage has been painted out as well, the way they've done it does.
Beautiful. Proper old school, classic.
People of a certain vintage would appreciate it, I'm sure. So Somkiat Chantra, 14th, you know, for his first day in the office.
He's less than half a second from the top 10. That is not bad at all. Yeah. And where is the third rookie? Aldeguer is in 19th. So Chantra is in front of Aldeguer for now.
Ayagura's teammate, Raul Fernandez, down in 20th. I asked him if he was fully fit. He broke a finger and a toe and missed the rest of the Sepang test. Came back here in Buriram. He says absolutely fine. So, nothing now. But you just wonder, don't you, when you're on the bike in the heat.
He had surgery as well.
Yeah, he did. And it was quite an ugly crash on braking. And it just locked the front, and it's happened to him before. So whether it's just had a little knock-on effect in terms of confidence, fitness, lack of bike time, missing the test. It's just all those... it does accumulate, and then you've got rookie teammate Ayagura coming in there, and I've got to say he's clicking and working well on his side of the garage, and that just lumps a little bit more pressure on Fernandez's shoulders, and sometimes that can even cause another downward spiral for him whilst he tries to get out of the hole and tries a little too hard.
Yeah, it was the knuckle on his little finger on his left hand and his little toe on his left foot as Fabio Quartararo goes up into third place. So it looks like Fabio's able to extract the one lap that he started to show at times last year, didn't he? Towards the end of last year, that he was starting to get there. Then it was, you know, can't really battle in races. We will see. We will see if it's a different story this year as Frankie Morbidelli goes up to second and the Ducatis are starting to line up, or are they? Because Marco Bezzecchi for Aprilia has just gone up into second place and pushes Ayagura back to 11th. Jack Miller goes into 12th on the Prima Pramac Yamaha. Still Alex Rins down in 18th on the second factory bike, and Oliveira down in 21st. So it's Quartararo and Miller really that are showing any pace with the Yamaha.
Yeah, but this is it. I mean, this is going to be the last time attack. So yeah, Quartararo looking really good, and Bezzecchi again, just like the test, just like at the test.
The question mark isn't for Aprilia, is does this translate? I'm not sure we can tell until we get to Jerez, because we have some weird tracks. Aprilia's went well one year when Aleix Espargaro won in Argentina. The following year, it was a disaster. So, just
going to say one thing: the Aprilia, like historically, always had trouble with those tracks, like here in Buriram, with that special rear tire, you know, rear compound for the heat. So they had a problem in Austria, they had a problem here, they had a problem in Mandalika as well. And it seems like they don't have that problem anymore. So this, if anything, this bodes quite well.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely right. It does. But again, you don't want your fingers burned by getting too excited, do you? One of the problems that the teams say with this tyre is actually the centre of the tyre is the bit that gets chewed up.
Yeah, it did, especially for KTM during the test. We saw some tyres coming back after race simulations that were, you know, they could still ride with them, but you could visually see that
Black top almost, wasn't it?
They had a massive. It looked like it'd done a burnout.
Yeah.
2.5 minutes to go.
This is it for Pecco. He's in P10 and he needs that desperately.
It's a good lap from Bagnaia. Is it going to be enough to seal his passage through into Q2? Two-time MotoGP world champion wants his crown back, and he's into 7th place. Times are so tight. The top 7 now covered by 0.295. Marc Marquez has gone out with the same soft front on the used one as he must have gone out with before.
Bezzecchi is having another go, so he did like one lap to cool down while he actually went wide at turn 1 and went into after the curve.
Maverick Vinales up into 12th on the Tech 3 Red Bull KTM. There is Bez. So he was on a fast lap again, but unfortunately has gone down. That will bring out the yellow flag for Marc Marquez and Maverick Vinales. So that's their shot at it done, unless it can just squeeze through for another lap. So Bezzecchi looks okay. Was stood by his bike and ready to get back, but he could well have sealed his passage through. Ayagura into 8th now for the rookie. Excellent, excellent from as Pedro Costa takes second from Marco Bezzecchi.
It's been a good session for Acosta. Every time we've seen him, he looks comfortable. The bike's loose. He's sideways, not missing his apex.
Yellow flags.
Yellow flags at turn 3. Is that still from Bezzecchi's
I think it must be. I think it must be. I haven't seen anyone else go down there, have we? There's a lot of runoff. There's a runoff. There's a little bit of gravel in the middle, so maybe he can get stuck. And Marc Marquez will have just taken a lap off. We'll hope to go again. So we'll just have to see if he does get another lap in. Yeah, he's about to cross the finish line now. There is Bagnaia, meanwhile, heading out. Yellow flags have been brought back in. So through the first split, he is under. Leaving it late here, Pecco Bagnaia. Lots of yellow flag laps being taken away after Bezzecchi's crash. We said there'd be a yellow at some point. It's the Italian who went down. Checker flag being waved at the end of our first day of practice here in Thailand. Still a few indicators of
come on.
frustration between Bezzecchi and his mate. His mate, Frankie Morbidelli.
Yeah, he
been
does
a few
it
times with Frankie recently, haven't there?
Every time. I mean, how many times have Frankie Morbidelli's done that? Such a shame. Why?
Yeah, want to see that from a wider shot, see what was going on. Let's have a look. Here we go.
Yeah,
he went off track there, Frankie.
I know, but where he is now, he's on the racing line. He should know better.
Shouldn't be there. Yeah.
He shouldn't be there.
Whoa, well, Simon Crafar.
Simon, yeah. There you go,
will
Simon.
get his new
That's a penalty.
pencil out.
But Morbidelli's had multiple penalties already. I mean, he's completely in the way. That's not acceptable.
That's really bad.
Yeah, you can't
Simon's
do that.
going to be getting the pencil sharpened,
Well,
no doubt.
what Simon said to me when I asked him if he had a pack of pencils already sharpened, said, no, the pencil's not for me. I'm not doing the writing. I'm just doing the telling. Other people can write it for me. Well, we'll see. We'll see what he makes of that one. Here we go then. Alex Marquez has gone to the top of the timesheets and he's going to beat his brother actually across the line. We know that was Marc Marquez's. And Julia is down in the Grassini garage where he spent a lot of last year, of course. And he's chosen Alex's side this time. And
so Mark's done his best lap in the last laps, and and he did that while pulling that wheelie. So it is so close actually with his brother. There's half a tenth, so he would have got P1.
So Alex Marquez tops the standings at the end of the first day. It wasn't a flash in the pan. He looked so quick in testing at the end of last year, as soon as he stepped on this 24 bike, and then back in
He's
Sepang.
not left the top two since Barcelona winter test, Sepang winter test, Buriram winter test, and then now